Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about the state of PSVR2. As you guys know, this headset has been the center of attention recently, with multiple media outlets jumping on the bandwagon and putting out hate articles left and right about PSVR2, taking every chance they can get to paint a doom and gloom narrative in a desperate and quite frankly a pathetic attempt to convince the average consumer that PSVR2 is over and that no one should invest in it. If any of you guys have been following PSVR2 closely since launch, or even before that, then you must be used to this kind of articles, right? I mean, it's kind of a habit at this point. For me personally, if a week passes without getting a new hate article regarding PSVR2, then I start to feel like there was something missing. That's how frequent these articles are. So yeah, the seemingly never-ending trend of dunking on PSVR2 shouldn't really surprise you if you've been paying close attention to the industry. But of course, not all people do that. In fact, most people are what we call average consumers, average gamers, people who don't follow this stuff closely and who make their judgment and decisions based on articles from well-known media outlets, and that is, my friend, where the trouble begins. You see, if I was an average consumer who happens to own a PS5 and who is interested in buying a PSVR2, if all I see on social media regarding PSVR2 is hate posts and hate articles and whatnot, then surely that's going to put me off from buying this thing. Of course, the average consumer is not gonna look into these articles, he's just gonna take them as they are. Hell, he will probably just read the title and say, F this thing is not worth it. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, to tell you many things about PSVR2 that you didn't know and which you certainly won't ever find mentioned in those articles, at least not in the way that they should be. But first, I want to encourage you to take a second out of your day to support the channel and hit that subscribe button for me. You see, the overwhelming majority of you guys who watch my content are still not subscribed yet, so how about we change that right now and we collectively smash that subscribe button. Thanks a lot for your support. Okay, so let's start with the hardware side of things. The PSVR2 is a magnificent VR headset, and anyone who tells you otherwise clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not perfect, of course. Just like anything else in life, it has some drawbacks, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons. Here's what the media says about PSVR2's hardware. It has a cord. It sucks. I'm not joking, this is literally what they choose to focus on. What they won't tell you though is that that cord is essential for you to experience some of the best overall visual presentations that VR has to offer today. Of course, Sony could have made this a standalone headset, just like the Quest for example, but obviously in that case, the headset wouldn't have enough juice in it to make games look as superb as they do currently. Instead, you'll be left with Quest 2 or Quest 3 level of graphics, which is not bad, especially for Quest 3, but surely it's nowhere near as good as PSVR2. So that cord that the media seems to hate is the thing that ensures you get a console quality gaming experience in virtual reality. And you couple that with another key PSVR2 feature, which is the eye track dynamic foveated rendering, and you get VR games running on PSVR2 that look on par with high-end PC VR games, and sometimes even better. And guys, it's just one cord. If you put it behind your shoulder, trust me, you won't even feel it. Something else you might find in those articles or in social media posts or whatever is that games on PSVR2 look blurry. That is 100% not true. Games that are well optimized look insanely sharp on PSVR2, and while I do agree that the sweet spot is a little bit smaller than what I hoped it would be, it's still super easy to find, especially if you use your headset a lot. And also, regardless of what anyone tells you, the PSVR2 is generally a very comfortable headset. If you feel like it's crushing your skull or destroying your nose, then it's most likely not due to the shape of your head or to the form factor of PSVR2, but it's because you're wearing it wrong. What the media also doesn't tell you about PSVR2 is that it has an OLED display, which means the black levels on this thing are as deep as it can get, like is it on kind of deep, making it the ideal VR headset for horror games. But it's not just horror games. PSVR2 is also a great VR headset for shiny, colorful games as well, and that is because it supports HDR, high dynamic range. And it's not a gimmick guys, trust me. Colors do pop in this headset, in a way that you just won't find on other headsets. And that's not all. Other than the great visuals, PSVR2 has some exclusive sensory features that take the immersion while playing VR games to a whole new level. If you're a PS5 gamer, you're gonna understand this quite easily. You know the highlight features of the PS5 DualSense controller, the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. Yep, those are implemented in PSVR2 Sense controllers as well. If you ever use the PS5 DualSense controller, you would know how much of a difference those features can have, and that's for flat games, mind you. Imagine the effect of haptic feedback and adaptive triggers then, when well implemented by the devs in VR. PSVR2 also has another cool sensory feature that adds to the overall immersion, and that is the headset feedback, which means, for example, if you take a headshot in the game, you will feel it in real life. All these features that I just talked about make PSVR2 really stand out from the competition. But of course, no media outlet is gonna tell you that. Again, I'm not saying it's a perfect headset. It obviously has some flaws, and I can acknowledge two of them right now. One of them really bothers me, and it can be fixed, I wanna make that clear. But yeah guys, the reprojection is horrible on this thing. I literally can't use smooth turning in reprojected games, like Horizon Call of the Mountain for example. Now as I said, this is a software issue, which means Sony can fix it in the future, and luckily for us, all the PSVR2 games that have released recently are not using reprojection, so it's beginning to seem like less of an issue than what it was back then at launch. Another flaw is the Mura effect, which is quite noticeable in some games, but it's also non-existent in other games, which makes me think that some developers just know how to handle this better than others. So yeah, I think all in all, in terms of hardware, no one can deny that PSVR2 is a great piece of tech. And now let's get to the software side of things. PSVR2 has no games. I bet you heard this or read this somewhere online. Well, it's also and you don't have to believe me. Just take a look at the current PSVR2 library. And let's talk about the launch lineup for a second here. You see, PSVR2 launched with the best launch lineup in the history of VR. Quest 3, however, didn't even have a launch lineup. And did you see any media outlet mentioning this? The answer is no. At launch, PSVR2 had Resident Evil Village, GT7, Horizon Call of the Mountain, and Switchback VR. And let's focus on GT7 and Resident Evil Village, because these two games, in my opinion, if they were given the spotlight that they deserved, they would have set the world on fire. I've been gaming for as long as I can remember, and Resident Evil Village on PSVR2 is literally the best gaming experience I have ever had in my entire life. Nothing even comes close. The Last of Us, Uncharted, Grand Theft Auto, etc. I love all these games, but experience Resident Evil Village for the first time on PSVR2 is just something else. It literally made me feel things I have never felt before while playing video games. The immersion is that real. I really felt like I was Ethan Winters. So for me, a game like this alone justifies buying a PSVR2. It's really unfortunate that AAA hybrid games like this don't get much love and attention from the press. And if you were to ask me, well, that's in the past, what are the games that are coming to PSVR2 soon? Well, there are plenty. All of the industry's biggest and most anticipated games are coming to PSVR2, like Behemoth, Alien Rogue Incursion, Metro Awakening VR, Zombie Army VR, Aces of Thunder, Wanderer the Fragments of Fate and its sequel, The Seas of Fortune, and many more. So it's safe to say that we will not run out of games to play on PSVR2 anytime soon. Besides, all of these upcoming third-party VR games will most likely run best, feel best and look best on PSVR2. And if you were to ask me, well, how about the exclusives? First of all, this is not flat gaming. VR is still a niche, and if you're new to VR, then you should understand that exclusives don't make much sense in the VR industry at the moment, so don't expect many of those. Sure, we'll probably get some exclusives here and there, like the hotly anticipated Aces of Thunder, and hopefully we'll get some great first-party games as well, but at the end of the day, it's the indies that keep VR alive. And if you were to ask me about the recent rumor that says Sony doesn't care about PSVR2 and they only have 2 first-party games in development right now, then make sure to click the link on your right, as that's where you will find my answer.
But heroes don't survive the Forsaken Lands. only monsters do.